Greetings and welcome everybody to valortube.com. My name is Paul Lear. I am an original content provider at valortube.com, and this is This Week in Prophecy. We got three big topics this week. We're going to take a look at three things primarily. We're going to take a look at Russia wargaming all over, I guess you'd say Eastern Europe and Central Asia. We also have reaction to vaccine mandates and just how quickly this spread this week. What started out as a mandate from a state in Australia has quickly escalated around the planet in about 5 days. And lastly, we're going to close with China flexing its military muscle. And we're going to take a look at some scripture in regards to that and what, I would expect that to continue moving forward if this is the time we think it is relative to the end times, end game scenario that the Bible talks about. So we're first going to start, with Russia, and the focus is going to be on Russia and Belarus. So Russia is important because of Ezekiel 38 and 39. They are the ancient name Magog. I got plenty of stuff on my website at paulthepoke.com in regards to Magog's invasion. And they are going to be joined at some point in the future by what is modern-day Iran, modern-day Turkey, modern-day Libya, and arguably Ethiopia, Sudan, and so forth. And they're going to look to invade Israel at some point in the future. So, but before we do that, any kind of military buildup, most of the time it's with these things happen with Turkey. But this was pretty exceptional. I want to give a shout out to Checkmate on this. He had sent me the original article on this, and then it started showing up in my news feed. In regards to Russia getting together with Belarus to wargame it. And this is straight from, the Moscow Times. So this isn't something from some crazy right-wing conspiracy type of situation. We're going to take the words from the Russians themselves, and we're going to look at what they got going here. Whoops, little operator error. Apologize for that. But Russia and Belarus have kicked off the Zabad joint 2021 war games, and it's between Russia and Belarus. This has been described as the largest military drill in decades, involving up to 200,000 troops, including elite paratroopers, nearly 800 tanks, and 15 warships, plus 80 aircraft. And that's according to the Russian Defense Ministry, their figures. And again, that's not something that's being made up. It's across 9 Russian bases, 5 Belarusian bases. Seeks to check the two military parties' ability to jointly ensure military security and territorial integrity. So the thing is they're saying they're worried about it would be terrorism coming in from, from the south in Afghanistan. They want to keep all these terrorists at bay, the Taliban at bay, even though they're completely on their side. And they're looking, this is especially, and this is a quote from the Russians. One, actually, we got all kinds of stuff, but the objective of the exercise are to check readiness levels in Belarusian and Russian military command bodies' ability to jointly ensure military security and territorial integrity. Forgive me for repeating myself. Again, that's from the Russian Defense Ministry that came from a statement. So they've been doing their thing, and this concluded, I think, today on Sunday. So they did this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the drill's interaction during combat operations and letting commanders and staff practice troop management during joint actions in repelling aggression against the Union state. Okay, there we go. So we got that going on in Russia. Close that out. And as if that's not enough, so go back to our main map here. Now, if you're the Ukraine, I'd have to be a little bit nervous because Russia, Belarus on your northern border together. Russia's doing all kinds of stuff over here on the eastern border already of Ukraine. They've taken the Crimean Peninsula, and then they've kind of moved in and taken this area through here. So the Ukraine's getting surrounded on all sides eventually by Russia. At some point, makes you wonder if they're not going to, they're looking to just isolate the Ukraine or take over the Ukraine. A lot of oil and gas flows through the Ukraine. And if you're the Ukraine, do you have any confidence in the ability of the United States to do anything? You know, and eventually we all know where this is going. It's gonna go through here to the northern part of the Golan Heights in Syria and come down through here into Israel. Now, while that was going on as well, they were also wargaming with some other folks. Kyrgyzstan, as well as I think Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. I'm not too sure about those others, but they had this going. And well, it's called Frontier 2021. And it was a military exercise involving more than 1,000 soldiers and over 100 vehicles from Russia and 3 of its Central Asian allies has concluded in Kyrgyzstan. So Russians like to show off their tanks. It's a big deal. They're always engaging in tank competitions, international tank competitions. So they had this going on in Central Asia as well over the weekend. And, you know, again, Magog, ancient Magog, flexing his muscle in what at some point will be an invasion from the north into northern Israel. It will be attempted per Ezekiel 38 and 39. So, you know, you got some war games taking place over here north and east of Israel. You got some stuff taking place primarily north and a shade to the west in Belarus, where Russia's wargaming. And they're not messing around. I mean, so holy cow, estimated over 200,000 troops in Belarus. And then another 1,000 over here to the east in Kyrgyzstan. Probably saying that incorrectly, but you know where it is. Follow the little cursor over here on the eastern part of the screen. So we had that going on with Russia. Now, earlier in the week, for those of you who follow along at paulthepoke.com, this is my website. This all started in one state in Australia, Victoria, Australia. Citizens must have the jab to participate in the vaccinated economy. And again, this is in southeast Australia, the furthest southeast state in the country of Australia. And this is from Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews. So, you know, in the United States, it'd be essentially like coming from a governor, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And here's the quote: "There's going to be a vaccinated economy, and you get to participate in that if you are vaccinated. We're going to move to a situation where, to protect the health system, we're going to lock out people who are not vaccinated and can be. The economy, as best as it can, will operate as close to normal as possible to people who have had 2 doses." And again, that's Daniel Andrews. There's a picture of him, the Victorian Premier. And then they also floated the idea of vaccination passports, be tied to your smartphones, Android and Apple's. You have a QR code. Vaccination certificates must be integrated with the QR code check as a single system to reduce the impost on business, and that technology should be rolled out as soon as such a scheme commences. And that was per Victoria Chamber Chief Executive Paul Guerra. And again, this isn't from some fringe news media outlet. This is from abc.net Australia. I mean, so this is their mainstream press. And if you don't believe it, you can listen. You can click on this little tweet and you can listen to the guy's words himself. I mean, he makes it very clear. And then he backed it up. They arrested some Jewish folks for celebrating Rosh Hashanah in a synagogue. And it kind of sets the stage for at some point. Everybody talks about the mark of the beast. I'm not going to go into detail like I did earlier with this on some stuff on my website, but he's not the Antichrist, and the vaccination is not the mark. That's not the point. I got several reasons for explaining that, and I think why I think that. But it does set the stage, and it's opened the door for the idea that somebody's behavior will be tied to participation in the economy. Now, in this case, it's a vaccine. At some point, it's going to be you take the mark on your right hand or on your forehead. Scripture's pretty clear what that's saying, and that's later. It's in the last half of the tribulation. We haven't even started the tribulation, but again, you can check out Paul the Pope for all the details on that and why I think those things. But the thing I want to talk about today is just how quickly this idea started in Victoria, Australia. I believe it was on the 5th. So what would that have been? Like Sunday? 5th, 6th, somewhere in there. And just what all happened within 5 days. How this became an idea at the state level. And how quickly this spread across the globe. I mean, this is now a global phenomenon. And if you'd listen close, they made that pretty obvious. One of these guys up here, and it was Victoria Chamber Chief Executive Paul Guerra. In one of his quotes, and I'll quote him up here, the Victoria Chamber raised the concept of vaccination passports months ago. You only need to look overseas to see they are likely to be an integral part of our opening up. So they had been talking about this, and overseas from Australia would be the rest of the world. It's an island continent. It's massive. So overseas to them is the rest of the world. And then sure enough, within a week, look at what all's happened. This is out of CNBC. What you need to know about President Joe Biden's new COVID vaccine mandates. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on what was proposed here in the United States. But again, the idea is how quickly, this went from being a state idea and concept in one country, Australia, and now you have within a week the whole world literally jumping on board and pushing the same concepts. President Joe Biden's latest vaccination push is the most aggressive yet by his administration to get the raging coronavirus under control. Never mind, it seems to have peaked and be dropping off with the Delta variant. Federal employees, federal contractors, healthcare workers at facilities that receive federal funding must show proof of vaccination with no testing option. 80 million U.S. workers will have a choice between providing proof of vaccination or submitting to weekly COVID tests. So that's the response in the United States. We're not going to get into the politics of that and who has exceptions to that and the implications of that. That's not the point. The point I'd like to really make is how quickly this concept, the idea of your behavior, your actions being tied to your participation for a job, commerce, economics, access to basic staples. So that's in the United States. Let's go to Israel. And this is Prime Minister Bennett. This is from Arutz Sheva, Israel National News.com. And look at this quote. This is again from the Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett. Our tolerance for the unvaccinated has run out. COVID-related plans include genetic scanning mechanism at Ben Gurion Airport to help deal with the, quote, next variant. And you read down on this, broaden the green class outline. Regarding the education system, we will adopt the model. The time the distribution will not be through the school, but an alternative logistical way, and parents will also write a note. So they're wanting to get this into the educational system. Again, our tolerance for people who do not get vaccinated has run out. Prime Minister Bennett announced a genetic scanning mechanism currently being developed for everyone who comes through the gates at Ben Gurion Airport. I call it the Omega. We are working on a mechanism of genetic scanning for everyone who enters in Israel. In this way, Israel will become a radar for the virus. And this is from the Minister of Social Equity. On her statement, the next variant will come to Israel through Ben Gurion Airport, and the genetic mechanism will help deal with it. I mean, that just sounds over the top, but that's where this has gone within a week's time. And I want to get a shout out from a follower on Twitter, Jorge Fernandez Moravi. He pointed me to this. Is like, hey, you got to check this out. They're instituting genetic scanning in Israel, and gave me the link to the article. Here it is. I mean, so again, this isn't a fringe news source, a root Shiva. It's a national press out of Israel, israelnationalnews.com. So you have that going on. And again, thanks to Jorge Moravi. Appreciate the shout out, letting me know what's going on. I have all sorts of great people who follow the blog at paulthepope.com. Give me some great stuff to look into. Much appreciated. And then there's this in Paris. Anti-vaccine pass protest in Paris turned extremely violent today. Let's go beat each other with sticks. A couple of these guys are going to square off and go knuckles like they're in a boxing match. And this is in Paris. This is in France. People responding to their anti-vaccine pass. There you go. A little kicking. Now you'd think this little short guy's in trouble there. He's clearly physically overmatched, but backs that guy down. I don't know how would you know who you're fighting? It just looks like we're just fighting. Some kicking. Like we're just going to square off and hit somebody. There we go. All right. Humanity on display. That's in Paris, France. Let's go to Turkey. How do you think this is going to go down in Turkey? Thousands of anti-vaccine and anti-vaccine mandate people held a protest in Istanbul today. We aren't going to be slaves, says the speaker. We aren't going to be slaves to this order. Now, this is coming down from Recep Erdogan, president of Turkey. Now, notice at the time of this had only been seen 10 times on Twitter versus the one in Paris had been seen millions of times. Somehow this got out of Turkey. I doubt this will be up much longer. So when you folks go to see this, remember this is here. Remember this did happen. And you've got thousands upon thousands of people in Turkey protesting anti-vaccine mandates and anti-vaccine, thousands of anti-vaccine and anti-vaccine mandate people. They held a protest. It's like, no, we don't like this. We want our freedom. Slippery slope, what we're talking about here. But again, the idea is that a government, an individual can impose their will on a populace of people to the point that it will determine whether or not they can participate in economic affairs. And that's exactly what the mark of the beast does in the back half of Revelation. So we have that going on in Turkey. We have this going on, I believe this is in Austria. We got the police out, demonstrators protest against new COVID-19 measures imposed by Austria's government. And again, this is out of RT, I believe. Yep, Russia Times. Again, now I know people say, oh, it's the Russians, the boogeyman, they're putting out false news. Well, no, they're not. This is just pictures of these people in Austria. And again, this is Western Europe, free Western Europe, allegedly. And they're protesting the idea against COVID-19 measures in regards to vaccine and vaccine mandates. You got people protesting there. So, again, about a week ago, less than a week ago, we had a situation where one premier, effectively like a governor of a state in Australia, said, hey, take the jab or you're not going to be able to participate in the vaccinated economy. And look how quickly, this has become a global deal in less than a week. I mean, these things are happening with breathtaking speed, and I believe it's out of Daniel, the end will come like a flood. I could be wrong on that, but I do know that is said somewhere in Scripture. And look at the speed at which these things are taken, especially in regard to this vaccine, and just how the whole world has just decided, or governing authorities around the world have decided, you know what, this is a good idea. And we're going to make the people do this. And lastly, we're going to close, we're going to go to Revelation 9. And specifically, we're going to look at the sixth trumpet. Then the sixth angel sounded his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar before God, saying to the sixth angel with the trumpet, release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the four angels who had been prepared for this hour and day and month and year, specific time, I believe that's what God's saying, released to kill a third of mankind. And the number of mounted troops was 200 million. I heard their number. So 200 million man army leaves only two options on this planet currently. It's either India or China. And I'm going to lean toward China. They seem to be a lot more aggressive than India. And they are very active, of course, in their own backyard, kind of taunting Taiwan, making all kinds of improvements to their military with nuclear silos and missiles to the western part of China, building up their navy. So I'm leaning toward this being China. See what Scripture says. Now, the horses and riders in my vision look like this. The riders had breastplates, the color of fire, sapphire, and sulfur. The heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths proceeded fire, smoke, and sulfur. Draw what you want out of that. A third of mankind was killed by the three plagues of fire, smoke, and sulfur that proceeded from their mouths. So that's twice it says it's going to kill a third of mankind. Now, again, I take it, your two options are China and India. I'm going to lean toward China pretty hard. And so if you look at the fractions of the number of people, I think it's in Revelation 6, it talks about a quarter of mankind being taken out. We're approaching 8 billion with a B, 8 billion in population. So a quarter of 8 billion would be 2 billion. So 8 minus 2, 6 billion. And then we get to this point, and again, just for the sake of simple math, because we know other people will be passing and dying during this whole time. But if you have roughly 6 billion at the time of Revelation 9, a third of that would be another 2 million. So the population of planet Earth gets cut in at least half by the sixth trumpet. And Jesus said if these days had not been cut short, humanity would not have survived. So, Revelation 6 to Revelation 9, and we've taken out half the population of the planet, at least. Which also wanted, at this point, I want to give a shout out to Checkmate at valortube.com. If you folks don't follow Checkmate, you're missing out. This guy's wired into the Middle East. He provides great information. He's an analyst and looks at these things like intelligence specialists do. And I know this is going to be tough for some people to swallow. They think it's all bull. Pretty much you're being presented with some truth of the matter of how things actually operate and function. It's going to take some courage for some people to pay attention to this and listen to it and believe it. But Checkmate is giving you straight up information and analysis as he sees it, and well worth your time to listen to Checkmate at valortube.com. He also is an original content provider. Well worth your time and listen and reading. And he sent me this: China weighing occupation of former U.S. airbase at Bagram. And this is in Afghanistan. And of course, building on friendly relations, Beijing has secured the new Taliban government in Afghanistan. China is now considering new ways to expand influence and embarrass the U.S. Well, what better way than to take over a base held by the United States? China wants to go in there. U.S. and all NATO forces evacuated in eastern Afghanistan. Well, China wants to put their stuff in there. Sounds like a good idea. And the new Taliban government in Afghanistan, which convened yesterday, that would be 9/11, in honor of the 20-year anniversary of 9/11, rolled out their new government, which frankly was like a who's who of terrorists on the most wanted list by the United States. But that's who's running Afghanistan, and you got China agreeing to this and recognizing this government along with their friends of Russia and Iran. What could possibly go wrong? And we're not going to follow up on Biden's comments. A spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry on Tuesday issued a carefully crafted denial of plans for an imminent takeover of the military airfield. Whatever. I'll lay down some serious cash. What I can tell everyone is that is a piece of purely false information. And China says that is not going to happen. Okay, whatever. And if this is the time, I suspect we're going to see increasing Chinese activity in regards to their military buildup, political posturing. They're going to show strength. And Scripture says at some point, their actions of that 200 million man army, military army, will take out a third of the population and be close to 2 billion people. Now, at some point, and this is just me thinking out loud, in order for 2 billion people to perish, I suspect there will be some missiles fired, intercontinental ballistic missiles fired with likely nuclear warheads aimed at major metropolitans around the world to make that happen. I could be wrong. I have no problem admitting that, but something to think about as a possibility. And why would China want to go into Afghanistan anyway? Well, here's President Xi. And this is from the Washington Post, or I'm sorry, the Washington Times. Chinese muscle in on Afghanistan's rare earth mineral deposits create headaches for Biden. And China's looking to cash in. The diplomatic fumble with the mineral rights is particularly painful to Mr. Biden because his economic and climate agenda relies heavily on rare earth minerals to transform the power and transportation markets and rebuild the nation's semiconductor industry. Well, guess what? Biden missed out on that. Chinese are stepping in, and they're going to be the ones to reap the rewards of all the rare earth mineral deposits that are in Afghanistan. So, again, as time marches along, and if this is the time we think it is, as we're getting closer to an end times scenario. Now, when this actually gets started and kicked off, nobody knows, but it would appear there are more and more dominoes being set into place. And the characters, the entities, the countries that are involved in prophecy, they are moving, and they are moving themselves to positions of strength. And in the United States and the West, we are withdrawing, and we're not there. We're just not there. So plenty to think about. And that's this week. We had a lot happen this week. Lots of things going on. And I remember when I used to, if I would see maybe one or two of these stories a week or 2 weeks, it was a big deal. I mean, just look at that. This is the past week, and I've been doing this now pretty consistently for the last 3 weeks. And holy cow, we got, just looking at the top, Russian war games between Belarus and 3 other countries over there in Central Asia. They had operating 2 war games at the same time. The speed at which it went from a vaccine mandate to participate in the economy of one Australian state, and how that has spread to a global phenomena in Israel, the United States, Austria, Turkey, again in 1 week. And just think about that too, from the standpoint of governments. They're not all like-minded. You got a heavy socialistic bend in Europe. You have a loosely a dictator in Turkey with Erdogan. You have freely elected leaders in the allegedly freely elected leaders in different parts of the world. Makes you question a lot of stuff. United States, Israel, all kinds of, and that's not just, election irregularities are not just something that's happening in Western societies. Those things are being questioned all over the planet at this point. So, and that's not the point of this video. Again, the point is just how quickly these ideas, these concepts are spreading and appear to be racing toward the fulfillment of Scripture, and that, things have been put in place, into motion, and you can see an end game. And then lastly, you have China flexing their military muscle, and all this, the Chinese want rare earth minerals for money purposes, etc. So anyhow, appreciate you guys following along. I hope you enjoyed this week in prophecy. I'm sure there'll be plenty happen between now and next week, and we'll see what we get at that point. Check out ValorTube. Lots of great content providers at valortube.com. I want to thank the folks at ValorTube for providing a forum for me to provide a show. And for all you folks who like freedom of speech and the ability to express yourself without worrying about censorship, y'all should enjoy valortube.com. Invite your friends. Let them take a look at it. Appreciate y'all following along. Have a good one. See you next week. Bye.